Hi guys, Paul here. Today we're going to do a tutorial. I'm just going to create a comic book cover using a photograph that I took. Here's the photograph here. It's from a house of horrors in Niagara Falls. Awesome place to go. Now what we're going to do first of all is take the photograph and then we're going to convert it to a comic book sort of painted look. And then we'll add the type to it to give it that look of a comic book. So let's get started. I'll just close these ones down. Don't save and don't save. Okay, so here's our image. So what we'll do first of all is we'll create a new image. We'll copy this first of all. So select all with Control A. Copy it with Control C. And we'll create a new document. File New. We'll use International Paper and A4. RGB color mode. 300 pixels per inch. And of course a color profile. sRGB. I'll click OK. We'll give it a name first. Let's call it comic book. Click OK. And we'll paste. Control V. Now I'll just hit F on my keyboard to maximize the screen. And what we want to do, we need to shrink this up a little bit, so I'll hit Control T and hold Shift and drag from a corner. Hold the space bar down so I can drag the image down and have a look at it. Okay, what I want to do is I want to make sure there's enough space up top here for our title of our comic book, and also some space down here for stories that might appear inside it. So that's not looking too bad. I'll just hit enter to initiate the change, and I'll zoom up a little bit using Control Plus. Okay, what we want to do first of all is duplicate this layer another couple of times. So if I hold that layer and drag it onto the new layer icon and drop it on there, a new layer will duplicate, or I can simply just go Control J. Okay, now let's rename these layers. So the first one, I'll double click in there and I'll call it Original. The second one I'll call Ink. And this one here I'll call Lines. And I'll switch off the top one called Lines by turning off the eyeball here, the visibility icon. Okay, so making sure that I have black and white in the foreground and background colours. If you don't, just click this little icon here, that will revert to its default. I'm going to use a filter effect, so if I use filter, then it won't let me do it because I'm not on the correct layer. So ink, filter, sketch and stamp. And I think I'll use a light dark balance of around 30. If you can't see this properly, just zoom out by clicking the little minus icon down here. So I can increase it, say 40. I think it's a bit too dark, so I might bring it back to 30. That'll do. And once you're happy with that, just click OK, and that'll apply the effect to that layer. Now we can't see the image underneath, so what we should do at this point is change the way this layer is displayed. So let's making sure you're on that ink layer, change it from normal to multiply, and that's looking good. Next we can go to the lines layer, and I'll just turn that on. so I can see. And we'll run another filter effect, and this time we'll go to stylize, so filter, stylize, and we'll use find edges. Okay, that worked pretty good. Okay, so this is too light. Now if we change the way this layer is displayed, so we'll change it from normal to overlay, we can see the lines come up, but we can't really see much of the image underneath. We can see a lot of line work but not a lot of colour. So what we should do is change the way that layer actually looks by inverting it. Image, adjustments, and invert. Okay, and that brings back the detail. What we can also do here is we can drop the opacity for that layer. So there it is at 0, so we can bring it up a little bit. Maybe 30%, that looks okay. I mean, we can always go back and adjust it later on. Okay, that's looking pretty good. What we also need is a colour overlay on here to enhance its spookiness. So let's create a new blank layer. So making sure I'm on that lines layer, I'll click the new layer icon, which produces a layer directly above it, and I'll change its name to Colour Gel. And I'm going to choose 2 colours and use a gradient on this image. So let me just zoom out a little bit with Control minus. And the first colour I'll choose is a nice blood red colour. So blood is not red as bright as that, it's somewhere down here. Okay. Click OK once you're happy with the colour. If you want, you can use my settings, RGB, 184, 39 and 11. Click OK, and then I'll click on the background colour, and I'll choose a sickly cyany green colour. That will do. And click OK. Now all we need to do here is just use our gradient tool, and if I click and drag a line, if I hold shift the line will remain straight. I'll drag it from top to bottom, and that's actually the wrong direction. I need to flip that over, so I'll reverse the order. So I'll start from the bottom, hold shift, drag to the top, and that'll give us our nice blood colour down the bottom and our eerie glow at the top. And all we need to do now is change the way the layer is displayed. So I'll change it from normal to colour, and colour won't look that good actually. It works, but it sucks too much of the underlying colour out, so what we're better off doing is changing it to overlay, so we can bring some of that background colour through. Now that's looking fine. If you want to lose some of the detail, what I recommend is at the very start of the tutorial, in the original image, you paint out some of the detail. Let's go back to it. I'll turn those layers back on. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is create an area for our title. So I need a colour that's going to contrast well against this blue, green and black background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a nice bright red colour. If I want, I can make it more orange as well by adjusting the hue here, and I'll click OK. And the type I'm going to use I found on a website called the font, and the font is Green Fuzz, and you can freely download it and install it on your system. It won't cost you anything. So once you've installed it into your fonts folder on your system, it'll become active. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the horizontal type tool. I'm going to choose Green Fuzz, if I can find it here. Green fuzz. And I'll create my first text line, which will be tails space from space the, and I'll just center that up a little bit. Now at the moment it's way too small, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on the T in the layer itself to highlight it, and I'll make it larger, so maybe 90. Way too big, so I'll minimize that. If you want to use tools that are associated with type, hit Control T. Whoops, that was the wrong one. Excuse me. Yeah, Control T. Sorry. Okay, so what we can do here, that type is selected, we can change the size, so maybe 75, that might work. We'll just get it roughly in and finesse it later on. So tails from the, and instead of going ahead and creating all these new type layers, what I'll actually do is I can just hold the Alt key down, click and drag, hold Shift to keep it in line. And then I can go ahead and double click within that layer and just change it. So I'll change this word to cauldron. And of course it's too small. We want it to stand out a bit more, so I might make that 90. Maybe a bit larger. 115. And I'll drag that down a little bit. What I also want to do is I want to change the colour of it, so I'll make sure I've got it active, and I'll change the colour here to red. Click OK. And I also want to adjust the spacing, so because if I drag a guide out from here and another guide out from the left to this side, you'll see that the type doesn't run all the way to the end, so I can adjust the spacing by using, or the kerning it's called, adjusting this here, and I might say 50, which is too much, so 25, maybe 27, and I'll pull it back a little bit, pull it up a little bit. And that looks fine for the moment. Okay, what we also want to do here is we want to create some titles down the side here, so I'll grab the tails from the crypt layer, hold Alt, and I'll Alt drag a copy down here and select it, and I'll change its size, so I might want to use 30, maybe 40. That'll work for the time being. So I'll get it in and I'll line it up. What I don't want is type that is crushed right up against the edge, so it gives no room for your eyes to move around it. You should always leave room for your eyes to move around components of your composition. Anyway, so I'll move that down here. And I'll change the title of that itself, and I might call it Pimples. And I'll move it over a bit. And I'll drag a copy down. And I'll change that one also to shallow grave. Shallow, enter, grave. And then I'll do another copy with Alt and Shift. And I'll drag that down. And I'll call that one To Serve Man. A recipe book. Okay, once I've got them in, what I really need to do now is think about the colour so that it contrasts against the background. So you can see we're using quite an orangey colour down here, so this one needs to be a different colour. So I might double click on that and I'll change its colour to a green. Might darken up a little bit. No, I'll keep it bright. Click OK. The shallow grave. What will contrast against a tan colour? Let's have a look. Yeah, that'll do. We really just need it to stand out. And green might do it again. No, we'll keep it different. I'll go with a light blue. And the third one, pimples. So I'll select that. And I'll change its colour to a pinky purple. Okay, now once we've got those in, what we also want to do is change the way each one is arranged. So if I go to shallow grave and I just highlight grave, what I can do is I can make it a little bit larger, so I might choose 45 and I'll change the kerning as well. Oh, a bit more. Let's have a look at that. That's not looking too bad. What I also want to do is I want to squash them against one another, so I'll adjust the vertical spacing. Let's have a look here. Way too small. Okay, that might work. And I might make that a little larger again. 50, that'll do. And 40, let's have a look at that. Yeah, it's still not enough space between there, so I can go back and adjust that some more. 45, 43, that might work. And the last one, to serve man, which I'll do now. And I'll do a right justification on this word here. Whoops. I want to move it over, so I just might chuck in some spaces. And I'll highlight it and make it larger. That might work. Also adjust the vertical spacing. Maybe 55. I'll need to also drag it back a bit. Oops. That'll do. Clear the guides. Okay, that's not looking too bad. I might move these story titles down a little bit by shift, selecting those three layers, using the move tool, and I'll just move them down a bit. Move them in. Okay, next we need to do, we want this type to stand out a little bit more. So let's go to the cauldron layer. I'll double click on it. I'll right click in the layer itself and choose rasterize type. What this does, this turns an editable piece of type into an image that can no longer be edited as you would normal type. So once I've changed that, I'll change my foreground colour to black, and I'll hold down the control key and click in the thumbnail in the layer named cauldron. That will put a selection around it. So I want to put an outline on it. Edit, stroke, and I'll choose 10 pixels and black and center, and I'll click OK. Then deselect with Control D, and you can see I have a nice outline around it, which helps it stand off the page a bit more. Same with tails from the. I will rasterize that, make a selection from it, and do the same thing. Edit, stroke, 10 pixels, and then deselect. Okay, last thing we need on here is a panel, so I'll drag a guide out from the side. That'll do. I'll create a new layer above the colour gel. I'll put a selection in, and I'll fill it with a warm yellow. Edit fill. Foreground colour. Okay. If I want, I can also put an outline on it. Edit, stroke, outside. And I also need a piece of type on it, so I'm going to choose red or orange for my type. I think red might look better actually. And I'll use the vertical type tool, and I'll change my font type to, what have I got here? Helvetic is always a good safe one. And I'll type Terra. Of course that's too large, so I'll select it and I'll bring the size right down. Do. Choose my move tool, and I'll move it up a little bit. It's still too big, I think. 25. Bold. That's what I want. And I'll move it down, and it's not looking too bad. And I'll get rid of the guides. View. Clear guides. Let's bring up a black background, and there you have a comic book, horror comic book cover. Thanks for watching.